Today we're going to talk about the principle of creating an anchor. Now Leo and I know a lot about creating anchors because Leo's striving to be a professional bass fisherman, and sometimes when you get to the spot you have to anchor your boat on top of the fish. Now we don't use a traditional anchor where we drop an anchor down and it holds the bottom. We usually don't do that. Usually we're using like a spot lock or anchor mode on a trolling motor that's connected to GPS.
I don't think they know what that is.
That's actually for a whole other video. That doesn't really even have anything to do with jiu-jitsu. But for me, it does, because what we're doing is we're using a very advanced anchor system to sit on top of our target, our fish. And so you can really think of the martial arts the same way. If you can anchor yourself in a position where you can sit on top of opportunities that your opponent might be giving you, by keeping them anchored, you can look for opportunities and you can defeat them with submission holds. Let me show you what I mean. If you've trained in the martial arts, you're gonna find all kinds of scenarios where you can create anchors and you can anchor your opponent to a position. I'm just gonna show a few in this video. This is the mounted position. So if I'm in the mounted position, if I'm not anchored and I'm not anchored on top of him, he's gonna squirm and thrash all over the place. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my hand and I'm gonna hug his head and I'm gonna force his head one direction. So in this situation, I'm gonna make him look that way. So I'm making him look that direction. Now I put my other hand out for balance. What happens here is he cannot turn to that side, to his right, because I'm not gonna allow him to turn his head. So try to turn to that side.
I can't.
He's really hating it down there. I'm trying not to put too much pressure on him. It's a lot of pressure. And then I put this hand over here. With this hand over here, he can't move me that way because he's anchored that way. Then I expand my hips, so I lower all my weight on him, and he's anchored and he cannot move. Ready? And try to move. Once I have that anchor position, I can start looking for submission holds. From a sit-out position like this, my opponent, my son right now, Leo, he can move all over the place. You bring your elbow to the ground and turn into me. You can turn into me. He scoot his hips away. He might, in some situations, especially if they don't know a lot of martial arts or ground grappling, they might try to move away from you, try to move away that way. Go ahead. He can move, see? So we have to anchor them in positions. So to anchor my opponent here, I lift his arm up, I bite down here, and I lift this arm up. By me lifting his arms up, taking my feet, keeping my feet anchored to the floor, but raising my hips slightly and centering my weight on him, he's gonna be anchored in place and he will not be able to move. Ready? You try to move when I put the anchor down. Ready? Here comes the anchor. Ready? Try to move. Now I could just sit here and he's not really able to move, and then I can look for those submissions. So that's how we anchor in that position. From a side control position, if I was to take my elbow and put my elbow to the floor, Leo, I want you to just scoot your hips out. See how he can scoot his hips out? Go ahead and scoot your hips out and regard. Go ahead. He can scoot his hips out, he can regard, he can turn towards me. But if I was to take my hand and I was to put my hand, my palm on the ground, and then put my elbow here, the ground stops it. So it's still possible for him to turn his hip, but it's much harder now. So go ahead and see how that's much harder. And it doesn't take any strength from me at all because we're anchored to the floor. So those are some really basic ways that you can start establishing anchors, and you guys come up with some on your own. You're gonna find these anchor positions all over the place, both from the ground and from standing up. Leo has my back and my arms are here. My arms are free. I have my arms available. One thing, I've talked about this in other videos, is that he should hide his head, because if I swing around, I might hit him. If he hides his head, if I'm purposely trying to hit him, or if I'm trying to hit him, or if I hit him on accident, he's not gonna get hit because his head's hiding. Now me, I need to hook his foot. So my back leg is hooking his foot. Now, I've shown this in other videos. I don't even know if you can see the detail right here, but anyways, the reason why I'm hooking his foot is because if he tried to lift me up, I would now be anchored to him, okay? So I'm anchored to the ground, I'm anchored to the floor, so he cannot lift me up now. All right, so now I have I have his foot, my arms are free, okay? If he tries to lift me, he's not gonna get it. All right, then I step around him like this to his back. Okay, let's show a little different angle here. Here, watch. When I step around, I'm gonna get in a nice slow horse stance, and then I can either use my arms to hit him to make him fall, or I can catch his legs and make a little lift. If I'm gonna lift, I'm gonna use my legs, not my back. I'll show you guys that. We're here. If I'm gonna lift and scoop, my hips thrust forward, and I can take them over. And from this position, once you took